Good afternoon and welcome to a new edition of WIN TV, Washington Informer News. You know, some of you all always talk about my pencil sharpener in the back, and I was actually going to demonstrate how it works, but this is proof of how my pencil sharpener still works. This is early technology and it's still working, and so we don't necessarily need those anymore, but you never know. That's one of my dad's favorite lines, Dr. Calvin Rolark. He used to say, Denny, you know, you never know. And you don't know. So when those pens don't work, you can always run to the pencil sharpener and get that pencil working. I want to thank you all for being with us. We've got a very, very exciting show this week. Lots of great conversation. We're going to have with us the leader of the D.C. Federation of Democratic Women and former Congresswoman Donna Edwards to talk about Joe Biden, the Democratic presidential hopeful, Joe Biden's pick of Senator Kamala Harris as his vice president, and that was some great news that many received on Tuesday. And there's still a lot of what folks are saying and thinking about this pick. It was expected. There was a great hope that there would be a black woman as his pick, and now that we know that's true, they're going to help to talk about where do we go from here. And as you know, or maybe you don't, August 18th, the nation will commemorate the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment that granted women the right to vote. But how are black women involved in that movement, which we call the suffrage movement? And who's telling their story? Well, we'll speak with Gwen Mckinney, who established an initiative called Suffrage, Race, Power, Unerasing, which is a website, song, podcast, so much going on, and she's going to give us some details on that, as well as Dr. Valethia Watkins, historian, associate professor at Howard University, and also our own Stacy Brown, our senior reporter, who did a year-long series on women's suffrage, 52 weeks, actually more than that, and continues to tell the story about what's happening with black women and the vote. You know, I always like to start the show off with doing this. And I always say, bam, this is the business card. And this is this week's issue of the Washington Informer. And I hope that you've picked up a copy at your nearest newsstand here in Washington, D.C., Prince George's County, or Northern Virginia, or that you've gone to our website at WashingtonInformer.com to see the stories that we've covered this week. We're very happy to have, 4 times a year we do a insert on health, and Dr. Chantella Sherman, who is our special editions editor, focused this month on, for our health, wellness, and nutrition supplement, focused this month on mental health. And in this issue, she did a story on Pata Pata, the psychology of touch. Well, you all may be wondering what that is, and that's why you need to pick up a copy of The Informer, as well as probiotics and prebiotics. What is that all about? Pick up a copy of The Informer and you will find out. Or, you know, it helps us, and I need to really slow down here and say this, that we are so happy for those of you all, and we're probably about 9,000 strong, who have agreed to subscribe to our Washington Informer newsletter. And all you have to do is go to our website at WashingtonInformer.com. There's a sign-up form there. Every week we can send you information about what's happening in the newspaper, what's happening in the community. It's a great resource if you're an organization or a business and you want to use our email services to promote a product or service that you're engaged in. But most importantly, we want you to sign up and subscribe to the Washington Informer. We need you, and we think we have information that you need from us. So a quick few hot topics. You know, last week, marks the last 2 weeks of the DC Department of Recreation's summer camp, and registration is still open. Believe it or not, they have what's called a Fun in Sun in-person camp, and it's limited to a small number of campers. Of course, they're exercising social distancing, and we're asking or trying to suggest that there are a limited number of slots at 25 locations in the district. So if you're interested in participating for these last 2 weeks, visit dpr.gov. Again, that's dpr.gov for more information. And, you know, Attorney General Carl Racine, and we want to extend our condolences. You know, he lost his mom recently, and I think they're laying her to rest today. But he is one of the hardest working attorney generals in the District of Columbia. And he just won a lawsuit against the real estate company Evolve LLC, which has been refusing to rent or show apartments to tenants with housing vouchers. Evolve LLC will pay a penalty of $250,000 as a result of this lawsuit, and they'll be required to implement anti-discrimination training for its employees and other anti-discrimination policies. You're not going to get away with mistreating people with Carl Racine in that Attorney General's seat. So we're really happy about that. And then, of course, you all know that President Trump recently signed some executive orders, but there's some question about whether the public will still get that $12,000 stimulus check. We got one before. There was evidently some thought that the president would try to make that happen again. And it seems as though his executive order does not have the teeth that it needs, and he needs the support of the Congress to make sure that this money, which is much needed financial resource, is available to the nation, who is really still suffering. I mean, we just don't know the impact of COVID-19, and we can't stop talking about that because people are still suffering, and the cost of food and housing and all that really is going to hit a lot of folks if it hasn't already. And so that money is greatly needed, but we need folks to make sure that the Congress and all others are moving in the right direction. And then next, we want to at least extend our condolences and issue our prayers for those who were affected by the earthquake in North Carolina. You know, that happened just last week. And can you imagine an earthquake in North Carolina? It's like an earthquake here in Washington, D.C., which we experienced a couple of years ago. But it's just not one of those things that we expect, at least on this side of the United States. Those folks out there on the West Coast don't even seem to budge when they happen unless it's a very high number. But in North Carolina, it did have an impact, and so we're keeping those folks in our prayers, as well as the folks in Baltimore who experienced that awful gas explosion that destroyed several homes, and we know that the folks in Baltimore are trying to recover from that. And there's just been some real calamities taking place across our country and around the world. And these are some interesting times. So we just have to make sure that we stay concerned and try to find ways to help folks. And last but not least, we want to extend our deepest condolences to Kathy Hughes, the founder of Urban One. Kathy lost her mother recently, Miss Helen Jones Woods. And Kathy used to talk about her so much. She's an amazing woman. And Hamil Harris did a wonderful story on Miss Jones, who was an entertainer early in her life. She was adopted, amazingly. Could have passed for white. Actually, folks thought she was white, which gave her some opportunities. But she was still who she was, a Black woman who utilized her musical skills to get the message out about Black people. And she was, I can't remember the name of the group that she performed with for many years, but you know, it's in the story. So I want you to pick up a copy of the Washington Informer. So we're going to take a quick break and get a message from the census. And when we come back, we're going to talk to our political folks about the recent selection of Kamala Harris as the vice presidential nominee for the United States.
Complete the 2020 U.S. Census. It is safe and secure. It benefits your city, your community, and your family. Complete it online, over the phone, or once you receive it in the mail. You matter. Get counted. 2020 Census.gov.
So we waited, we anticipated, we heard the news. We just didn't know what was going to happen, which one of these black women or women that Biden had. And he had some very, very, very well qualified women. And that's one of the things that we talked about last week when we had representatives of the thousands of black women who signed a letter making sure that none of these women faced racism or sexism. And so we've been writing stories, we've had conversations, and finally we have Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, 2020 Democratic ticket. I'm happy to bring on now Dorinda White, president of the DC Federation of Democratic Women, and the Honorable Donna Edwards, former Congresswoman from the state of Maryland. Welcome to the show, ladies.
Thank you.
Okay, good, wonderful. So I see big smiles. Does that mean that we are happy or satisfied with the choice that Joe Biden made earlier this week? Don, I'll start with you.
Well, I think so. I mean, I think it was both a very smart political choice, strategic choice, but I think it also gave voice to the Black women who revived and carried Joe Biden to the Democratic Party nomination. We remember that, of course, it was Black voters and particularly Black women voters in South Carolina that really gave his campaign a lift and, in fact, got it started and to the point that it is. And I think that in this election, Joe Biden is acknowledging the power of Black women that we know as voters, as leaders in communities. And so it's a really good day, but it's a good day for all women, and it's a good day for America because it really demonstrates that we have the ability to build a multiracial coalition that gets the job done in November.
And that coalition actually exists there with the DC Federation of Democratic Women. Dorinda, talk about or tell us, what were you all actually involved in trying to push the Biden to select a woman? What's been, and I know after what happened with Hillary Clinton last term, I know that hopes were raised and then they fell. What's been the movement with the Federation?
Well, the DC Federation, as you know, is a part of a national federation, the National Federation of Democratic Women. And one of our most prominent members is the chair of the DNC Black Caucus. She was working on the inside out all the time, making certain that all the powers that be at the DNC knew that we needed to have a Black woman as a vice presidential candidate. So we've been working behind the scenes for quite some time through our 3 seats on the DNC.
So what happens now? We've kind of checked that box, at least as far as the nominee is concerned. The convention is next week. How are people organizing now around the ticket? And either one of you, Donna or
well, I mean, I do think, in my other life apart from media, I'm involved with a lot of organizations around the country, non-profit organizations that are making sure that people are registered to vote, that they know how they can vote, that are trying to work to protect the vote. And I think this selection of Kamala Harris adds a level of energy to the Biden campaign that is going to be really important going forward. You can already see that energy in terms of the fundraising numbers that Kamala Harris's election has generated for the campaign. I think they had a 24-day fundraising report of over $25 million from small donors. And I know as a candidate, when somebody gives you $1 or $5, they are in for a pound. And so I think that's a lot of strong grassroots energy that we have to mobilize and organize in order to get the job done.
And Dorinda, I mean, there was a question that was just raised. So in your response, maybe you can even respond to that question from Sharon Joy, who was asking how would the Federation actually encourage younger voters? I mean, still many of them seem disconnected, but how would you get younger voters, particularly young women, engaged now that we have a candidate that we think, they may be inspired by?
Well, what we're doing is we're hitting them where on a technology that they use the most, their cell phones. So we are launching, and we have launched a text messaging campaign where we can interact with them and engage with them, inform them of places they can go to get involved. And also we can go back and forth and find out what's going on in your area, share it with us, and tell us how we can help you to get out there to vote. We're also encouraging all of the young people to reach one and tell one. So we're encouraging them to educate each other as we move forward. Everyone is excited about our new vice presidential nominee. However, I think that we have to all gather around and coalesce in major groups and make certain that as we come together, we educate, bring up the younger people and let them know how important this is. But equally important is making certain that we engage the elderly people who are now seeing the prize at the end of the tunnel. So we need to make certain that they can get out there and be a part of this conversation.
I'm wondering because, when we see people that look like us in positions, we think that they're going to do something special for us. But sometimes we don't often ask, what would be the agenda items that you think women, but particularly Black women, might be putting on the presidential nominee's plate now that he has a Black woman as his running mate? Are there any particular agenda items that you think need to be raised to the level so that when we get to that convention next week, we hear these items spoken about?
Well, look, I think that when Joe Biden began his campaign, he actually launched his campaign with a message of unity, but also with those very visual images coming out of Charlottesville. And I think, of the young people, young white men marching in their white shirts and khaki pants with, tiki lights. And I think that he began with a message that says we're going to focus on race and the racial division that's been sown by the president and his administration. I think if you look at his agenda, that he's begun to incorporate some of the things that were championed by Kamala Harris during the course of the presidential primary related to health and services and education. And, the reality is that, we vote for president of the United States. The vice president augments that. But I think that you're going to see a way of communicating from this campaign that demonstrates that there really is an agenda that's about strengthening and building communities that have been left out for so long.
About you, Dorinda, what does the Federation have a list of issues? How do you communicate what you're doing to the candidates?
Well, our issues really blend in with the issues that are taking place across America now. Economic empowerment, making certain that women have a pipeline to positions of leadership. So because the mission of our organization is to advocate and to engage and empower women to run for office or to get engaged in the political process. So we're hoping that with a Black vice presidential nominee, that it will stir up an interest around the country for more Black women to step up to the plate, as they've always done. But now they can see the finish line much clearer than they have before. So we're going to really push to make certain that we identify, engage, especially younger women, and help to pass the torch so that as things move forward, we can have more Kamala Harrises coming into the fray.
Donna, you were a first. You're the first Black woman to sit in Congress representing the state of Maryland. Did that, when you won, I know you've had the credentials, you had the background, you had everything, that a candidate, that a voter would want in a candidate. That's why you won. But as a woman, was there any different? I mean, tell me what it was like. Tell me if you had, you faced sexism. What was that experience like for you?
Well, it was all of the things that even Kamala Harris is facing just, 36, 48 hours after the announcement. It's the attacks on her as a woman, as a Black woman. I mean, I can remember people writing things about the shoes that I wore and the clothes that I wore and my big necklaces. And so, I mean, I really think that women across the board, when they're running for elective office, they face these challenges. There are added challenges as a Black woman. But you know what? You have to do what Kamala Harris has done and just sort of put that stuff in the rear view mirror and continue to put forward your qualifications and credentials. There is no question for me that Kamala Harris is qualified not just to be the vice president as she is nominated, but if need be, she can be the president of the United States. And I think that we have to, sometimes as candidates, set that stuff aside and just continue to move forward, because it's going to be out there. And then we need allies who are out there, like the Democratic Federation of Women, like other women's organizations and male allies who come and like stomp that stuff when it comes out. And so I think that we have to be prepared for what's coming for Kamala Harris, because indeed it's already happened. And we need to be prepared to be out there defending it. And those of us who are in the media need to stop some of those questions before they're even asked.
And Dorinda, what kind of supports does the Federation provide actually for women women who are interested in running for political office? I mean, the numbers are growing.
Well,
this has been a good
yes.
time for women. So what are you all doing to support them?
Well, we are right now, during this whole election cycle, we are now focusing more so on voter suppression and making certain we get phone banking, postcarding, everything done. But we do plan to have some more training sessions to basically engage women and engage them in walking the pathway towards running for office. Many people have the idea that I think I can make a difference, I want to contribute, but they need mentors. They need people to guide within. We are slowly trying in the
we were kind of lost the connection.
To get to
there you go. All right, we're going to wrap up now. Donna, thank you so much. And we're going to have you back, hopefully, if you have some time to spend with us, so that we can talk about issues as they arise, and then after, going up to November 3rd, because there's a lot of work to be done right now to make sure that we get folks out there to vote. And Dorinda, I want to thank you so much for being with us, and we'll follow up with you as well. You ladies have a great day.
Thank you.
All righty.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So, wow, that was it was great discussion. Sometimes we don't always have the best connection, but it works out. I think we got all the information in, and it's always wonderful to talk to women there, and we will probably have more on between now and the end. There is no end, but going through November, there's so many firsts. It's amazing that there are so many firsts out here, especially among Black women, and we need to raise them up and talk about who they are. But we didn't get here on our own. There was a time when women did not have the right to vote. And not only did they not have the right to vote, but Black women, there were cases where white women wanted the right to vote, but not if they were going to have Black women pulling on their coattails to go across that finish line. And that's why we have with us Gwen Mckinney. Gwen is, as I said, the founder of Suffrage, Race, Power, Unerased, a beautiful website that you all need to take a look at, and Dr. Valethia Watkins, and also of Howard University, and reporter Stacy Brown. I'm looking for them to come up so that
Unerased, unerased, lift up Black women today. 100 years of pain, suffrage, and sorrow. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. It's time to honor those erased from her story. It's time to rise and take our place united, we won't be erased. Time to rise, time to rise. Stand in our power today.
What a beautiful theme song. And I want to really thank Gwen Mckinney and the team over at SRP Unerasing for putting that song together and to really get this conversation started about Black women who've been involved in voting since before we even had the right to vote. And so I'd like to welcome Gwen Mckinney, founder of SRP Unerasing, and also McKinney and Associates public relations firm. You see why she did such a great job with that. And Gwen, let's start a little bit by talking about what SRP is and the song.
Okay, and I also want to congratulate you. In the interest of full disclosure, audience, Denise Rolark Barnes is one of my founding sisters, and a very critical part of our steering committee and the Washington Informer Charity is our fiscal home for the project. So that just speaks to how important Black women, especially Black women publishers, are today and in the past. So your question, how did we come about? Is that what you asked me?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when we had that first conversation and you were saying, Denise, I was thinking about, and I was like, this is fantastic. We've got to move forward on this. Let me know what I can do. You know, I certainly want to keep you uplifted and keep you moving. But where did it come from?
Well, you know, it's interesting. And I really am serious about the important role of Black women journalists and publishers, because I am also a former journalist, and we played a critical role 100 years ago and 200 years ago. So I just wanted to say that. How it started was one day myself and another colleague were watching the women of Congress, and they all were assembled, the women of the House, in white. Everybody had on white, and even our sister Congressional Black Caucus members had on white. A few of them had a little pinty sash around their neck. And so I started talking to my friend, and she said, well, you know, that's like the symbol of the suffrage movement. And then that just got us going. Mm-hmm. Because why is white the symbol of the suffrage movement when in fact the suffrage movement, as most of us who know our history will tell you, grew out of the abolitionist movement. And those early fighters to end slavery in the United States, that work started first. And one of the greatest suffragettes, not only Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman, but Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, also a journalist who spent some time in the Washington, Baltimore area, was born in Baltimore, threw down the gauntlet. They were not known. And even Sojourner, she's known through this speech, Ain't I a Woman? But the work and the struggle, the sacrifice and the challenges that Black women endured for 400 years, since we landed here, is often not told. So that's really what got us going. And I think, Denise, the important thing about this whole conversation is that our work as 21st century suffragists, and I'd like to consider you a 21st century suffragist, is still going on. Mm-hmm. And it's much bigger than Kamala Harris. It's much bigger than any women who are leading the charge. I mean, the Voting Rights Act has been basically attacked and dismantled in many ways. So we are still struggling to ensure that not only women, but in our community, our children, our brothers, that we have a voice in this democratic system.
Gwen, I want to thank you, and I want to bring on now Dr. Valethia Watkins, who is with Howard University, historian there, African American studies.
Yes.
And also Stacy Brown, as you know, who did that 52-week series on suffrage. Everybody thinks that, well, I say 52, it was really longer than that. And everybody thinks, well, tell Stacy she did a great job. So when you talk about our partners and our supporters, you know, Black men were, because Black men still didn't get the right to vote at that point, right? So Dr. Watkins, kind of weigh in here on the historical aspects of the suffrage movement and Black women.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to join this conversation. Black women achieved the right to vote in spite of the often racist white suffrage movement, not because of that movement. And when we're celebrating the 19th Amendment and 100 years of voting for Black women, it really has been less than that. We mark our legally protected right to vote with the Voter Rights Act being passed in 1965. So for almost a half a century after the 19th Amendment is passed, Black women, in collaboration with Black men, struggle for the right to vote. And as Ms. McKinney observed, the Voter Rights Act was gutted in 2013. And so that fight for the vote still continues today with the attack on the post office, with the attack on mail-in voting. We are still in that struggle. So I like her term, the 21st century suffragist. But I will say that Black women, in exercising their right to engage in this fight, they exercise the right to define their struggle on their own terms. So they didn't concede to white women the defining of the terms for themselves. So what I mean by that is that they always fought for the vote by linking it to the upliftment of the race. So they saw the vote as a weapon of self-defense to attack segregation, to attack lynching, to attack sexual violence, to attack white supremacy. So they were always thinking of the vote as the collective property of the community. And what sets apart our struggle to vote is that we didn't just do it in single issue organizations. We organized our own organizations, such as the National Association of Colored Women. We had a suffrage department within that organization, but we also fought for the right to vote in traditional civil rights organizations like the NAACP, which often held symposiums in 1912 and 1915, where Black men and women weighed in on the importance for the vote. W.B. Du Bois said, votes for women is votes for Black women.
Stacy, you started this series basically after a conversation I had with Gwen and said, you know, we need to move forward on this. And you grabbed it and took it by the horns. What was your why did you feel so connected to the issue? And it seems as though you never ran out of people to talk about.
Well, Denise, again, I have to always credit you because we had that conversation back in Cincinnati in June of last year. And it just resonated because in the Black press, we have so many, like yourself, Black women publishers. And I just thought that here's an issue that all of us can get behind, all of the publishers can get behind, rather. And so when you gave me that assignment, it turned out to be a history lesson. I was never one to be a good study in school. When I was in school, I studied for my test the day of the test. I just didn't like it. But you forced me to study this history, and the things that I found were so astounding. Like you said, there's so much to write about. You know, Black women played a huge role, of course, in the 19th Amendment, but in the 15th Amendment as well. Black women found themselves pulled in two different directions. Black men wanted their support in fighting racial discrimination and prejudice, while white women wanted them to change the inferior status of women in American society. And both groups ignored the unique challenges that African American women face. Then you had people like Mary Tracy Terrell, Black women like her, and Frances Ellen Watkins, and Harriet Tubman. Of course, they understood that their race and their sex affected their rights and opportunities. So it was so much, Denise, and so I'm grateful that you gave me this opportunity to do it.
Well, I'm glad that you picked up the ball, but it's been really a tremendous thing to watch as Gwen has pulled together this Suffrage, Race, and Power, Unerased. The website is fantastic. And you know, what the website is not, it's a history lesson, Gwen, but it's also, like you said, talks about 21st century. Tell us a little bit about what people will find at srpunerased.com.
Well, and thank you for the URL, srpunerased.com. We believe, and I really appreciate Stacy's role and the way he grabbed it and took it and ran with it, because he could continue to do this every week, nonstop, until who knows when. And for us, that's the way it is. We believe that the notion of suffrage, the narrative of suffrage, has to be redefined. And it really is about our destiny. It's not just about casting the vote. And for us, as Denise and all of our founding sisters and our colleagues know, this work is, the whole notion is to really address the erasures that have carried us throughout our history. And that's why we created a word. Unerased is actually not a word. If you type it, it'll come up with a red line because it's not, allegedly doesn't spell anything. What we are doing is telling the stories of our ancestors who were the patriots and pathfinders of yesterday, but also the bold and embossed of today. And they are not just women who are in politics. People like our sister Donna Edwards, definitely, but also our sister Dr. Watkins. We did a feature and just profiled a woman who, Sharon Richardson, who ended up killing her abuser, serving 20 unjust years in prison. When she left, her kids were 2 and 8. When she came back, they were 22 and 28. What did this woman do? She started a catering business, and she hires and trains formerly incarcerated women. She's in Brooklyn, New York. When the pandemic hit, she started feeding the frontline healthcare workers with her catering services. And that she is a bold and embossed, despite struggles.
So you've also got a podcast coming that launched, I think, today.
Absolutely. And it is basically, you will be able to get the podcast wherever you get your podcast from. And you can also get it from our SRP Unerased with an ED.com. And Denise, again, interest of full disclosure, Denise is the moderator.
I'm telling all my secrets, Gwen. This is not time to do that.
The podcast is basically a 30-minute chunk. And we decided in the era of COVID to take a pivot and to create something that was portable, that was evergreen, that people could carry in their hip pocket when they were walking their dog or in their car or in their kitchen. And that 30-minute segment, the first one is called Likeable Enough, Women, Voting, and Power. And in fact, Donna Edwards, who you just had on the show, we're just one big happy family, aren't we, Stacy?
Yes, we are. Yeah.
Donna Edwards joined Denise in a conversation, and we had a mashup, which we call Just Saying, with 3 women, Black women, who are leading the fight around democracy and empowering voters to.
Well, we're about to run out of time, so I just wanted to say that, and I wanted to also say at the end of the show, at the end of this show today, because we're getting ready to flip over to the WI Bridge segment, but at the end of this show, you're going to get a chance to hear the entire song that was produced by Latasha, who's the singer?
It's the Latasha
Brown.
Mm-hmm. Which was produced by me.
Right,
and
exactly.
Brown was
performed it. All right. So yeah, you saw a little bit of that before we came on. I want to thank Stacy and thank Stacy Brown and Dr. Watkins for being with us. And we hope that you will go back, read some of those stories that Stacy wrote For those of you all who
This
are
week.
teaching.
This week, Dr. Watkins. We featured Dr. Watkins this week. So
Yes.
in the Washington Informer. So
Thank
check
you.
it out.
Full circle.
So, you know, for those parents out there who are trying to figure out how you're going to supplement, you know, we complain about the fact that our kids aren't learning Black history in the schools. Well, they're home now. And we are providing the tools to help to teach that Black history, particularly for our young girls. So I want to thank you all for providing lesson plans and information. And we're going to put your contact information up as well. And I just want to thank you all for joining us.
Thanks,
Thank
Denise.
you.
All righty. So at this point, we're going to turn it all over to WI Bridge, and I will see you all next week.
Hi, I'm Ron Burke, Director of Advertising and Marketing for the Washington Informer. We are proud to serve as the leading multimedia company connecting you to the African American community. We know the Black community is disproportionately affected by COVID-19, and it is our mission to keep you informed of all the positive news that you can use related to this pandemic. The Washington Informer continues to operate daily, delivering news. And together with our hardworking and dedicated staff, we can do more to support your business. We are in this thing together, and I want to help you. Let me customize a solution that will help you effectively reach our more than 87,000 readers and subscribers. Our goal is to keep your business at the forefront of your customers' minds. We want you to come out of this stronger and better when this crisis is over, but we've got to get there together. Contact me today. I'm Ron Burke. I'm at 202-888-6835 or rburke@washingtoninformer.com. Let's work together and stay safe. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Claudia M. Watts, the managing editor of The Bridge. And so I'm really excited to be with you all today. I'm going to be joined by Dominic Adams, and he is the co-owner and founder of Somewhere Boutique, which is located in the Southeast Waterfront neighborhood. It's right by Nat Stadium. So bring him in. You're muted. Awesome. Dominic, hey, how are you?
Hey, how are you?
I'm
Great
great.
to see you.
Yes, so I'm so excited to have you here today because you know that we are big fans of Somewhere at the Bridge. And you all know I always have to do a shameless plug. We've got some collabs coming up.
Yes, a lot of exciting things on the horizon.
Awesome, awesome. So I guess tell me a little bit about Somewhere, right? You know, what is this kind of third space concept that you all have where it's not just a boutique?
Yeah, so the idea with Somewhere was always my partners and I, we've been really blessed and fortunate to travel. And so it's really bringing that international men's street fashion conversation to Washington, D.C. In an environment that sort of fosters it. So we do have a cafe here that we work with, a local, actually Black-owned bakery, which is Souk by the Sweet Lobby, who bakes our pastries fresh every day. And then we also work with a local roastery, Vigilante Coffee, which is out in Hyattsville, Maryland. And we primarily use Ethiopian sourced and Brazilian sourced beans through fair trade operations to sort of bring up that program. And then all of the fashion here is a mix of domestic and international brands. And we put them in more or less a white room, and not a lot of it's not a lot of decoration here. It's very stark. The lighting's very harsh, but it more or less makes you interact and have conversations.
So it's kind of like a gallery vibe for the clothes.
Very much so.
So how do you determine like what's hot, like what to stock, you know, what designers, what is that process?
So for us, again, it's very much related to travel and interacting with our peers that are located globally. And so we're always keeping an eye on Instagram. When we fly into a market, we try to stay we try to fly in like 2 days beforehand just to really get what the local vibe is and understand kind of what things really are when we travel.
So, all right. So then what was your last shopping trip? Like where'd you go last? What'd you get? What are some brands we're going to see in Somewhere, Dom?
Yeah, so this is gonna sound so shake foo foo. Let's see. So we were in New York and then we landed in Paris for about a week and a half. And so we were in Paris and then we went back to New York. So we have a few really exciting brands coming up this season and for the spring. One of the brands that we're super excited about, we were the first shop in DC in a long time to bring in anything from Owens Corp, which is Rick Owens' empire. And then we're also bringing Plus from Comme des Garçons. We're going to be the first shop in DC to sort of premiere that brand here on the men's side. So we're super excited to sort of facilitate that viewing for our public here.
And so this little, I see in your background, looks like you have like a little mood board. Is that what that is?
Yeah, it's anyone's been somewhere, someone's always loud. So the only place I could find some quiet place right now is in the studio.
Okay.
So you might see some secrets up there. Hopefully it's not too close. But yeah, it's kind of more or less the war board for what's coming up in the next couple of weeks. And so we're just like strategizing, and then because of COVID, figuring out where things are in the import system and in the shipping system, just trying to locate where everything is, and so we can get our shooting schedule correct and down pat.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, how has that impacted you in terms of what you've been able to provide, like selection wise, to your clientele? Because I know that like some places haven't been keeping their stocks as heavy, or you know.
It's been really challenging. First I like to say, we're so blessed to still be able to be open and operational because so many shops are not, and unfortunately, a lot of them aren't coming back.
Yeah.
And so we've just been very, very lucky by some quick thinking and some pivots into some activations we've done. But right now, getting things onshore is very challenging, and also things that are produced domestically are a little challenging. Because productions was shut down for certain brands. Some production has been delayed. Some production has been canceled. Some things have been stuck in customs for a lot longer than what they typically would be. So yeah, stuff is really upside down. And then also because of the delays, figuring out what should land and what time has just passed, And so sometimes in some of these more interesting things, when the hype is like down a bit, it's just not smart from a business perspective to bring them in when sort of the attention span has already sort of
gone elsewhere.
Yeah.
So do you all have a private like somewhere brand that is like yours that you're stocking or that you're designing?
Yeah, so we've been doing some things in-house, and so I'm really fortunate. One of my partners is Will Sharp, and so he has a design background. He used to actually still has a brand called Dirkle.
Okay, I'm familiar with that.
Yeah, so he's able to dust off some of his design chops with that, and then I'm able to sprinkle a little bit of my magic in there. And we've been coming up with some private label things, primarily through a lot of collaborations. But we might be growing the in-house brand a little faster than what we initially anticipated.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was thinking about, like different boutiques and things like that. I know that there was a period in time where I felt like there were so many cute ones. Like there was like a Commonwealth and like Stussy and things like that. And I was always curious in terms of business, if it was smarter to have a private label or to simply just stock, other brands. And then especially going forward with the shift now that COVID has created, do you think that might be a more advantageous lane, especially also to add the strong sense of like DC homegrown identity?
Right. Yeah, I think there's definitely a path forward there. I know our initial intention was always to be a multi-brand door and to grow that business slowly. But since we're sort of pivoting a little bit more into that, it's just based on just sheer demand. But we always want to show, like I said, a lot of these brands that don't get a lot of, I don't want to say get a lot of love, aren't carried so much in DC. And so, for example, we carry Awake in New York. And so there's only a few stores in the world that carry that brand. I think like Dover Street Market and like Supreme and Union and a couple doors like that. And so we always want to have that element for the kids like us, that are,
Exactly.
especially during COVID. I mean, no one's really traveling to LA right now. No one's really traveling to New York. So, we still have to give them the ability to touch and feel a few things that they're genuinely interested in.
Mm-hmm. And so as a Black business owner here in DC, you're running a boutique, we didn't even really touch on the fact that you don't even need as many clothes when you're stuck in the house.
That's still debatable. Debatable.
So it's like, where do you see the market, and like, what kind of advice would you give to someone else that wanted to enter, DC's kind of boutique fashion scene?
I think genuinely care about what that scene is. One of the biggest reasons why we really elected to do this project and why it's located where it is was that we really needed, to sort of take the FUBU acronym for a second, we needed a for us by us kind of model. And so right now, I think that it's all about being exciting and being creative and really like earning that attention is important. And so I think long gone, well, I won't say long gone, but I think the days of relying just simply on a little bit of hype from 3 years ago or 6 months ago, that's not an option. So you have to create that energy every single second you can and do it in such a genuine, pure way, just to keep it going. We've been seeing some really inspiring creativity come from all over the map in places that we typically wouldn't look for brands. We've been noticing some really incredible young designers that are just emerging from all over the place, and we're paying attention.
Oh, I love it. So thank you so much for joining me today. Follow Somewhere Official on Instagram.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So thank you. And I just have one little announcement to make to you guys before we wrap it up for the day. And that is tomorrow, there's going to be an outdoor installation opening at Union Market. And it is actually presented by a DC bred photographer named Brian Summers. And it will feature work from 5 other DC photographers. And so next Thursday on the 20th, I'll be moderating the discussion between Brian and some of the other photographers. It's called We Present What We Represent. So hopefully you guys can join us. And that's it. I'm Claudia M. Watts, signing off.
Unerased, lift up Black women today. 100 years of pain, suffrage, and sorrow. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. It's time to honor those erased from her story. It's time to rise and take our place. In this moment, we won't be erased. Time to rise, stand in our power today.
Black women are miracle workers.
Tell our story.